Masechet Beisah, Daf Gimel 3. We are continuing our discussion of the egg that's born on Yom Tov, which is prohibited according to Bet Hillel, and we're trying to figure out why. And so we laid out, so to speak, 4 reasons for that in the first daf. And today we're going to discuss those reasons further. And so here's the outline for today. First, we're going to ask, why does each view reject each other? Then we're going to see that Rabbi Yohanan lines up with Rabbi Yishak based on a contradiction that Rabbi Yohanan asked about and his resolution. We can tell that. And third, a challenge to the derabanan opinions, the second 2 opinions based on the Baraita. We're going to try to resolve that. So basically, if you remember the beginning of Masechet Sukkah, also there, we brought up a few different fundamental formulations or understandings for the reason of the Mishnah. And then we went back and forth saying, why does each disagree with each other and other applications of it, dirat keva, and so on. You can see that the beginning of this Masechet has different content altogether, but a similar format, which makes sense. This is the opening of each Masechet. At least these 2, and probably others also, have this introduction to lay out various opinions and then work through them, and that serves as a good foundation for the rest of the Masechet. So here, we begin with just a quick review. So why an egg that's born on Yom Tov, why should it be prohibited? Rav Nachman says it's because of mukseh. He's assuming that it's a chicken for laying eggs, and therefore the chicken is mukseh, the mother is mukseh, and therefore the child is also mukseh. Something that comes from something mukseh is also going to be mukseh. That's his reason. Our problem with this question was, why didn't it talk about the chicken itself? Why are they arguing about the egg? If the chicken is a mukseh chicken, then they should have been arguing about the chicken also. And Mishnah didn't say that. And so for that reason, we followed up with a second opinion of Rabbah that says it's a chicken for eating. So don't worry about mukseh. That's not the problem. Rather, the problem is hachana. It's assuming that it's a case of Yom Tov that fell out on Sunday. And if it fell out on Sunday, then that means the egg was prepared on Shabbat. Now, even though nobody did anything to prepare it, it was just all done through nature. Nevertheless, it was prepared on Shabbat, and you can't benefit from something prepared on Shabbat to Yom Tov. There should be a T. That's Rabbah's opinion. That would be a problem mid-deoraita, because we learned the law of hachanaf preparation from the man, echinu asher yaviu. So that's the Baraita. Then Rav Yosef and Rabbi Yishak both say it's the derabanan. Rav Yosef says it's a decree related to falling fruits. Obviously, you can't pick a fruit. Not only that, but even a fruit that fell on its own on Shabbat or on Yom Tov, you can't take it because then you may climb up the tree and get it. And so when the rabbis made that gezerah, they said, you know what? There's something else that's similar, an egg that falls from a chicken. If we allow that, then people are going to say, oh, an egg is allowed, then that means the fruit that fell is also allowed. And then they're going to come in and to pick fruits. So because they're very similar, therefore the rabbis made a decree, even though technically there's midoraita, there's nothing wrong with the egg. Rabbi Yishak said a similar thing, that it's about seeping liquids. If you have grapes that generally you would squeeze, you didn't squeeze them, just some liquid seeped out on its own. That's a problem. If you allow that, then people are going to come to squeeze it. And he thinks that an egg that's laid by a chicken is more conceptually similar to a seeping liquid. And that's what we're going to talk about right now. Why does each view reject each other? What's the benefit? What are the pros and cons? So, Kuluhu Rav Nachman la amre. No, none of the other 3 agree with Rav Nachman, because Kikushan, the question that we asked already before, which was, what if it's a problem of mukseh, because the mother is mukseh, because it's a egg factory chicken, then they should have talked about the machloket regarding the mother also, and they didn't. So that is rejected. The other sages don't agree with Rabbah that it's about preparation, because they don't have the concept of preparation. This doesn't mean that they permit actually going and preparing food for Yom Tov for Shabbat or the other way around. but rather they limit the law. And they would say, in this case, no person did anything to prepare it. It was prepared min hashamayim. It was Mother Nature that prepares the egg inside the chicken. So no one did anything. It just is done by itself. So there's no problem of a person preparing in this case. And so that's why they disagree with Rabbah's application of preparation. And that is a very important principle. So we understand why those two opinions were rejected by the others. Ela Rav Yosef, my tama lo amar ke Rabbi Yishak. How come Rav Yosef didn't like the reason of Rabbi Yishak? That is it more similar to food or liquid? Amalach betza uchla uperot uchla lapoke mashkin delav uchla. They say, well, an egg is food. This is very interesting. Even though an egg is liquidy, right? You open up an egg, it is liquidy. Nevertheless, it's something that you eat. Generally, eat it cooked. Even if you eat it raw, still it's called eating an egg. No one says drinking an egg. Even in English, you wouldn't say that. This is an important halachic distinction. It relates to other food items also, like soup. You don't drink soup, you eat soup. And in halacha also, that is the law. This would affect things like the shiur. How much soup would you have to eat to violate Yom Kippur? Well, let's say you're sick and you're allowed to eat a little on Yom Kippur. So the soup that you eat, would that join together with other food, or would it join together with liquid to make a minimum amount? The answer is soup. Even though it's liquidy, it's still considered food. So that's his idea here. An egg is food, and fruit is also food. So therefore, these two are comparable. If I allow a person to eat the egg, he's going to end up eating fruit that fell off a tree and also getting fruit from the tree. And this is not similar to liquids that squeeze out, because that is not food. So that is why Rav Yosef rejects Rabbi Yishak. And the other way around. Rabbi Yishak ma'itama lo amar kerav Yosef amar lach betza beloa umashkin beloin lapuke perot demiglu vekaimu. He says your comparison is not as significant as mine. Rabbi Yishak says a betza, an egg, is enclosed within the chicken, just like juice is enclosed within the fruit that it comes from. Right? I can't see them from outside, and they both then come out of the place where it was before. So in that way, they are visually and conceptually similar. And unlike fruit just falls from a tree, but you can see the apple on the tree. You can see it on the floor. It looks the same. It's revealed, it's exposed, and therefore that is more different than a juice that's coming out, and therefore it's more appropriate to give that reason of juicing. All right, good. Now that we understand why everyone disagrees with each other, we're going to bring some support, but also some challenges. And we begin with a support statement by Rabbi Yohanan, who will agree with Rabbi Yishak. Ve'af Rabbi Yohanan sabar gezerah mishum ashkin shezavu. Yep, you can't eat the egg that was born on Yom Tov, because you may come to have a fruit juice a fruit on Yom Tov also. De Rabbi Yohanan, de Rabbi Yehuda ad Rabbi Yehuda umeshaneh. Now, Rabbi Yohanan never said this explicitly, but what he did do is he took two statements of Rabbi Yehuda, the Tana, and he juxtaposed them against each other and showed a contradiction. And Rabbi Yohanan answered it also. So right now we're going to review like a whole lecture that Rabbi Yohanan once gave. It must have taken him a while to explicate all of this. But we're going to see from the very fact that he asks a question in two different areas. One of them has to do with juicing fruits, and the other one has to do with an egg that's born. Because the fact that he's comparing these two cases to begin with means that he agrees with Rabbi Yishak that would be the reason why a chicken egg is prohibited. So now let's see the sources. They're interesting in them themselves. So Tanan, here's one Mishnah in Masechet Shabbat. En sochatin tapelot losi mehen mashkin v'im yatsu me'asman asurin. You're not allowed to squeeze fruit to get juice on Shabbat. If the juice came out on its own, just from natural pressure, then it's permitted. That's Tanakama, who is more machmir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, im le'ochalin hayoseh mehen mutar. Im lemashkin hayoseh mehen asur. Rabbi Yehuda says it depends on what kind of fruit it is. If it's a fruit that you usually juice, like grapes or oranges, then whatever comes out of it is prohibited, because since you usually juice them, when a little juice comes out, you're going to say, oh, look, I'm so happy the juice is coming out, and that's going to get you in the mood for more, and then you're going to come to juice it. But if they're eating fruits like mangoes or cantaloupes, so those, you never juice them. So if a little juice comes out of the mango, you'd actually be upset about that. Says, oh no, this is not good. And so you're not going to go and juice a mango. Nobody does that. And so therefore, if it's made for food, I said it the other way around. If it's made for food and the little juice comes out, I'm permitted. I can have the mango juice that came out. It's permitted because I'm not going to come to squeeze a mango. But if it's like grapes, which are made for juicing, then a little bit comes out, it's prohibited because that will lead me to juice more. Okay, so therefore, Rabbi Yehuda is more lenient in saying that mango juice that comes on its own is permitted. Tanakama says it's not. Now, what can we learn from here? Alma kol ochalin l'Rabbi Yehuda uchla teifrat. We saw this phrase yesterday. It's food that's separated. So anything that is food and something comes out of it, we consider the thing that was separated, that came from it, to be just still part of the food. It's not a new item. It's just the same item that happened to separate. It will be the same as cutting the mango and eating part of it. So too, with an egg that is born, it's the same as if it was inside the mother and I did shechita and then took it. And if it happens to be that it came out, it doesn't make it a new item. And so, therefore, food does not create a new being, that even though it separates. That's source number one in Shabbat. Now, here's the other source that we're going to use to contrast and contradict it, from Eruvin. Urminhu ve'od amar Rabbi Yehuda matnei adam al kalkala sheperot b'yom tov rishon ve'ochla b'sheni. This first case has nothing to do with ours, but I'll explain it anyway. We're talking about Rosh Hashanah, which is good. It's coming up soon. And so someone has a basket of fruit and he didn't take terumah. He forgot to take terumah before. You're not allowed to take terumah on Yom Tov, because then you're fixing it. You're taking something that is unusable and making it usable. And even though it's for food, it's something that you should have thought about before and you could have done before. So you can't take terumah on Yom Tov. However, here is a loophole. You can make a condition. And on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, you'll say, listen, if tomorrow is Rosh Hashanah and today is not Rosh Hashanah, then I'm going to take these two baskets. Whatever fruits in this little basket will be terumah for that which is in the big basket. Okay, and if today is Rosh Hashanah, then what I just said is meaningless. And then the next day, on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, you say the same thing, but in reverse. It says if today is not Rosh Hashanah, then I want this small basket to be separated as terumah for the big basket. And if yesterday was Rosh Hashanah, that's the same. And if today is Rosh Hashanah, then I'm not doing anything. So now either way, one of the days worked, right? Either it was taken yesterday or today, and I didn't violate anything, because one of the days of Rosh Hashanah is not really Rosh Hashanah, right? Because it's safek. We don't know when the witnesses come, when is the real Kiddush HaChodesh. So therefore, ve'ochla b'sheni, I can eat the fruit on the second day, because either way, I did take terumah. Okay, that's a great loophole. And similarly, if an egg was laid on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, I could eat it on the second, because no matter what, if the first day was actually Yom Tov, today is not. And if today is Yom Tov, yesterday when it was born was not. So then it was permitted when Yom Tov entered. He's assuming that the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah are the same as 2 days of other Yamim Tovim, in that it's a safek. Only one or the other is actually Yom Tov and the other is nothing. So therefore, if you combine the two doubts, one of the days is certainly not a Yom Tov, and that's permitted. Those are the two sources he cites. Now, Barishon in, Basheni in, Barishon la. So what can we derive from the second source? that he permits eating the egg on the second day, but on the first day it would not be permitted. It would be prohibited. So here's the source of his challenge. On the one hand, the first source said that an egg that comes from a chicken is food that comes from food and is not considered a new thing, right? Because he says here that fruit, mango juice that comes from mango is considered fruit from food and not a new thing. And therefore, the egg that comes from the chicken should be not a new thing and permitted even on that very same day. And yet here, in the second source, he has a whole loophole to permit it on the second day, but it's prohibited for sure on the first day. So which one is it? And so he has that contradiction. Just from the fact that he brought this contradiction shows that he thinks the reason why, Rabbi Yohanan thinks the reason why a chicken egg would be prohibited is because it's similar to liquid that is coming out of food. And that is why he's bringing the contradiction. In the end, Rabbi Yohanan answers and says, Meshane Rabbi Yohanan mukhlefet hashita. You know what? We have to switch around because he doesn't like this contradiction. He switches the opinions. It's not clear if he switches the opinions in the second source or, Rashi says, the first source. So let's go with that. And he says, actually, Rabbi Yehuda is the one that is machmir. And he's the one that says you can't take liquid out of food, no matter what type of food or if it's considered food or drink, it's prohibited either way. And once we do that, now it makes sense, right? It is in fact considered a new thing, and therefore the egg that comes out of the chicken is a new thing, and that's why it's prohibited. So the fact that he's comparing juicing a fruit to an egg that's laid, that means he follows Rabbi Yishak. Okay, any questions?
Yeah, Rabbi. The story with Hachana, if it's the case that while the egg is inside the chicken, it's being muhan for the next day,
right?
So then we should prohibit any eggs that are born the day after Yom Tov as well.
Because then you can't prepare from Yom Tov to Chol.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, that's a good point. Right. That would be a problem. Or, I mean, yeah, that gets into, okay, questions about hachana. If something was prepared and then, given the amount of time, like if you cook something by mistake on Shabbat, you could still eat it as long as there were enough time that you couldn't. So it's not necessarily, wouldn't be prohibited forever, right? It would just, but maybe you're right for a certain amount of time. Yeah, that's an interesting point. I have to look more into that. Okay, so back to our outline, we talked about why they reject each other, and now we saw that Rabbi Yochanan agrees with Rabbi Yishak based on this contradiction. But now that you mentioned this contradiction between these two sources, it's actually quite interesting because there are simpler ways or other ways that you can resolve the contradiction, and you don't have to necessarily agree with Rabbi Yishak. And that now we're going to see two more responses to the contradiction that Rabbi Yochanan cited. One in the name of Ravina, and one in the name of a different Ravina, Bar Ola. So let's see how they resolve the question. Ravina Amar, Leolam Latipuch. No, you don't have to start switching around opinions. When we have a tradition that's passed down that Rabbi Yehuda says this, it's very convenient. You just say, oh, I'll change the text. But we'd rather not do that. So instead, Rabbi Yehuda was only arguing to their points. I don't agree with this thing, but I'm asking, I would give this as a challenge to you. Rabbi Yehuda says, I think that an egg is permitted even on the first day. There's no problem. Because I think that it's just food that comes from food. So it's still considered the original thing. It's not considered anything new. So it's totally permitted. But you should still agree with me with my loophole, because according to my loophole, right? If it's the first is Yom Tov, fine. The second is not Yom Tov. If the second is Yom Tov, the first is not Yom Tov. So either way, it should be okay because they're two different holy time periods. And the rabbis respond to him and say, no, it's all one long kedusha. So this is actually a very important and interesting halacha that Rosh Hashanah, according to this opinion, is different from every other Yom Tov. Every other Yom Tov is really a safek. We just don't know which day it is. And so on those days, yes, you can use this loophole and you can make this conditional. this conditional statement. But on Rosh Hashanah, once the rabbis established that Rosh Hashanah is going to be 2 days, they didn't establish it as a doubt about this day and a doubt about that day, but rather as a continuous 2-day holiday that is all one Kedusha, which is an amazing thing and a completely new way of thinking about it. Truth is, this makes a lot of sense because for all the other Yom Tov, 2 days of Yom Tov, it depends on whether Rosh Chodesh was the 30th of the previous day or Aleph of the next day. And so it's one or the other. Rosh Hashanah is the only one where we celebrate Aleph and Bet Tishrei. In other words, Bet Tishrei in our calendar is for sure not Rosh Hashanah. It's not like the 30th. We don't call it even the 30th of the previous day. So there is definitely something fundamentally different about it. And so that was the discussion there in the second source. So the Rabbi Yehuda wasn't saying on the first day it's a problem. I think on the first day it's also okay. He was just presenting his loophole idea to the rabbis, and they rejected it no matter what. All right, that's the second way of resolving the contradiction. And now the third way, Ravina bere. Okay, the whole time you were assuming that the chicken is not mukseh, and that's why we were thinking of other problems of is it a problem of a gezerah and so on. But I would say it's a chicken that is growing eggs, made to grow eggs, and therefore the chicken itself is mukseh, and so the eggs are also mukseh. And the Rabbi Yehuda would follow his own opinion because he's the one that has mukseh, right? He's as opposed to the Bishimon. This is the famous machloket throughout Masechet Shabbat. And so this Ravina here, Bered Rav Ula would follow Rav Nachman, the first opinion we mentioned yesterday, that according to Hillel has mukseh, and Hillel agrees with Hillel and Rabbi Yehuda follow the same opinion of having mukseh, and that explains why, and really has nothing to do with fruit being squeezed. There would be no point in even bringing the contradiction in the first place. Okay, good. So now that we've finished the second part, we're ready for the last part of the sugya. And this is going to be a challenge to the last two, the derabanan opinions, right? Not like Rabbah. Rabbah said it's Baraita. But here, the last two opinions, I say it's a gezerah miderabanan. We're going to challenge them based on a Baraita. I'll just tell you the fundamental part of the challenge is going to be that the Baraita says if it's a safek, it's permitted. A safek, that's a safek. Now, a safek derabanan, we follow, is lenient. A safek deoraita is stringent. So this opinion is going to say, this is going to say that it's not allowed. Safek is not allowed, which is good for the deoraita, but bad for the derabanan answers. So let's see the source. Metibe, okay, challenge from a Baraita. Echad Beisah shenoda b'Shabbat, echad Beisah shenoda b'Yom Tov, en metartilin ota, lo lechasot ba et hakeli, ve'lo lismoch ba kareh hamita. If an egg is born on Shabbat or on Yom Tov, you cannot move it. Before we said you can't eat it, right? In our first Mishnah. But interestingly, if the main thing is mukseh, then you can't move it at all. And when you can't move it, you're not to cover something with it, like you take the eggshell and you use it as a protective covering over something, and not to put under your bed if your bed is shaky. Now, you might think this is strange to put an egg under your bed. Why would you do that? The truth is that an egg is actually quite strong if you hold it right side up and try to press it down, right? You can try with all your might to smash it and you won't be able to. My kids and I actually did try this at home over a sink, but we did try it at home, and you can, right, and it can withstand tremendous pressure because of the shape and structure of the egg that distributes that weight all around if it's held in the long way. Okay, would I still use it to hold up one of the legs of my bed? I don't know. We really have to be in a particular position to do that. But nevertheless, the point is that you cannot use it for any of these reasons because it was born on Yom Tov. And so, whatever the problem is, let's say mukseh. But here's what you can do. If the egg is there, you can't move it, but I want to protect it until tomorrow. So I can go take a bowl and move it and cover it so that no one will step on it or sit on it and it won't break. And so even though I'm moving something for the sake of something mukseh, that is permitted, which gets into another halachic topic of moving things on account of something that's mukseh. Now, the Baraita continues with 2 lines, usfeka asura. If you're not sure, now not sure about what? Apparently it's talking about the same case. If you're not sure if the egg was born today or yesterday, you just saw it there, you're not sure when, so we have to assume no good, and we say the safek is prohibited. Oh, that's interesting, right? We'll talk about that. And the last thing is, if this egg got mixed up with 1,000, even 1,000 other eggs that you know are permitted, we prohibit all of them. That's very strange. Usually, things are batel. If it's food, 1 and 2 should become batel, or other things are, 1 in 100, whatever. So, but this is not batel. Why is this not batel? We're going to see. The reason is because this is davar sheyesh lo מתירין. Even though it's prohibited today, just wait till tomorrow, and this egg will be permitted. So there's no reason to rely on the nullification. Oh, it's 1 in 1,000. Right now, it became all 1. We don't, for other prohibitions, we do that. Milk that falls into meat, we're going to say, it's permanently prohibited. So then, if it's just a little bit and there's no taste, so we'll use the tool of nullification. But for this case, don't use that tool of nullification. Just wait till tomorrow. So davar sheyesh lo מתירין is prohibited even 1 in 1,000. This is, by the way, one of the reasons why chametz on Pesach is not batel even 1 in 1,000, because let's say you got something mixed in. Just wait till Pesach is over, and then you could eat it. So then it wouldn't be a problem. All right. So that is the Baraita. Okay. So now we're going to analyze the Baraita. Bishlama lerabba. Damar mishum hachana have safek deoraita. Rabba was the only one of the group that quoted a pasuk and said, because you're preparing one day for the other, that is a problem mid deoraita. So therefore, this safek, if I don't know when this egg was from, it's a safek deoraita. Bechol safek deoraita lechumra. So Rabba can explain this baraita perfectly well. Everything is great. However, Ela l'Rav Yosef u'Rabbi Yishak tamrei mishum gezerah safek derabanan hi v'chol safek derabanan lekula. The last 2 opinions said it's a decree, a rabbinic decree, because it might lead to something else. But that's only the derabanan, and therefore it should be lekula. So they're going to have a hard time explaining this word usfeka asura. So their answer is going to be, we're going to answer for them. Maybe the case of safek asura is talking about a different type of egg, an egg that's a terefah. The chicken was unhealthy, wasn't going to last, lived out the year, and anything that comes from a terefah is also not kosher, and so the egg is not kosher. That's what's talking about terefah egg, which is deoraita, and that's why safek asura. Okay, it's a bit difficult to this kind of reading because that's not what it was talking about before, but who knows? It's a possible reading, and so that's going to be their answer. The problem with their answer is that they also have to explain the last clause, that if it fell 1 into 1,000, it's also not allowed. Now, terefah is not davar sheyesh lo מתירין. Terefah is prohibited forever. You can never eat it, which means if it was 1 into 1,000 and one of them is terefah, it should be nullified and permitted. And so therefore, if you're going to say that this clause, safek asura, is talking about terefah, then what about the last clause? How are you going to deal with that? Okay, so that's the question. That's our discussion now. A question? Go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, what about muktzeh? Why don't they bring up muktzeh? Is muktzeh considered derabanan or deoraita?
It's a fantastic question. Generally, we consider it derabanan. And so you're right. Technically, it could be a question on Rav Nachman also. Why don't they ask about to Rav Nachman? Maybe it's because we already rejected Rav Nachman in the beginning for the reason that we gave. Although there is some reason to say that mukseh is even more than a derabanan. If you look at the way Rambam formulates it and the way it's treated in many places, it's like a very strong derabanan. Maybe it might even be considered in some sense a deoraita. So that is a great question why they don't ask on Rav Nachman. The simple reason here could be just that he was already rejected, so we don't have to bother asking about him. Okay, yeah, great point. So now, okay, this source works well for Rabba because safek deoraita, but for Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yishak, they say it's derabanan. Why would a safek be lechumra? So their answer is sefatan lisfek terefah. The end of this Baraita is talking about not a new egg that born on Yom Tov, a different case of a terefah. And we're not sure, did this egg come from the teref chicken or a kosher chicken? Or you could say, we're not sure if this chicken, was it a terefah or is it not a terefah? And that's why it's safek deoraita lechumra. Okay, so there you have to split apart the Baraita. All right, fine. You know what? We'll give you that, but here's now a challenge. What about the last line of the Baraita? Mixed up in 1,000, no good. So according to our understanding, Rabbah, that says it's talking about the same case all throughout. So something that's born on Yom Tov, something that's born on Yom Tov will be permitted tomorrow, and anything that will be permitted in time, you don't use the principle of nullification to permit it. Just wait. So that makes sense. But terefah, which will never become kosher, therefore the law of nullification should apply. And so even if you want to say the Baraita is talking about two different cases, even the last clause doesn't work with terefah. So how are you going to answer that? So we'll try two things. Maybe you'll say an egg is a significant item, and there's a rule that significant items don't become nullified. For example, a slightly different halacha is a bug that's a whole bug does not become nullified because it's a whole being. You can't say a whole being becomes nullified. And so to an egg, even though it's not alive, it's a significant thing, and therefore it doesn't just get mixed in, right? You wouldn't say that it becomes nullified. All right, so that's a possible answer, but that answer is only good according to one opinion, not according to another opinion. We're about to quote the Baraita with the Mishnah where all this is based on, but I'll explain it first. In the following Mishnah, we're going to have two readings. One says kol and one says et. The idea is as follows. One says anything that is counted. So here's the idea. Some things are sold in groups. Like you can't buy one cigarette. You can't buy one piece of gum, right? They're sold in groups because one of them is not important. But other things that are important, yes, you buy one of them. They're sold by the unit, right? A television. You don't buy a pack of televisions, not even in Best Buy, right? You buy one. So therefore, anything. So if we say et shedar kol imanot, that means things that are always sold by the unit, those are not nullified. The one that reads the word kol is more inclusive, which would mean things that are sometimes counted as units, but sometimes are grouped, are also significant. So therefore, eggs, well, we buy eggs by the dozen. Back then also, they generally bought eggs in groups, but sometimes, maybe if there was a scarcity, you could buy an egg as one unit. So therefore, a Beisah would be considered significant according to the version that says kol, but according to the version that says et, an egg would not be significant. And then we couldn't use this as an answer to the question of why it does not become nullified. So if you say that it's significant, that's why it doesn't become nullified, even 1 in 1,000. But is it really that significant enough? So now we're going to bring the source for these two opinions. Ditnan, mishayu lo chabile tiltan shel kil'e hakedem yidalku. Someone who has bundles of clover, but this vegetable that they have was in kil'ayim. Kil'ayim is not permitted. It was mixed up with another species. You have to burn them. You can't even get benefit from them. Now, nit arbu b'acharot kulan yidalku. Rabbi Meir says even if it gets mixed up, right, in others, and that gets mixed up, even if it's mixed up in a lot, you have to burn the whole thing, and it's never is nullified. They say, yes, you can nullify it 1 in 200. That's Rabbi Meir. What's his reason? Et shedar kol limanot mekadesh. V'chachamim omrim eno mekadesh ela shisha devarim bilvad. So Rabbi Meir says, here's the word that we're going to analyze, et shedar kol imanot, something that is generally sold as a unit. Mekadesh here doesn't mean that it makes something holy. Mekadesh in the sense of it makes it prohibited, off limits. So anything that is counted individually will make other things prohibited and not be nullified. And v'chamim omerim, no, eno mekadesh elisha devarim bilvad, Akiva omer shib'ah. And they say, the rabbis say, it's only 6, or Rabbi Akiva says 7 items that are considered so important that they cannot be nullified. That's it, only these 6 and 7 items, not other things. So they are more lenient. Now, what are the items? Elohen, egoze perech, virimone badan, chabiot setumot, chilfe teradin, kilche kirub, udlaat yevanit. This, by the way, is just an interesting list to see what were the great delicacies of the ancient rabbinic world. So there was these nuts from a place called Perech. The nuts were so valuable, they were sold 1 nut at a time. And the pomegranates from Badan, these wonderful pomegranates, sealed barrels of wine, that makes sense, you'd buy 1 at a time. Some branches of spinach, some kind of special, right, Popeye spinach, even 1 branch was sold individually, or a stalk of cabbage, or Greek pumpkins. Loaves of that you make at home, these are sold by the units and they're special, and therefore these items, 7 items, are nullified, but other things are. Okay, but we're focusing on the Rabbi Meir that says anything that is sold as a unit does not become nullified. We continue a little. Hold on. The Baraita, the Mishnah. And within this list, whatever is a fruit will be prohibited if it's orla. Whatever is subject to the law of diverse species will be subject to that. The fruit would be like the pomegranate. Okay, that's the end of it. Now, Yohanan amar et shedar kol imanot shaninu, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish omer kol shedar kol imanot shaninu. So, focusing on these words of Rabbi Meir, when his general rule, what is the correct word here? Rabbi Yohanan says the correct word is et shedar kol imanot. Only things that are always counted individually cannot be nullified. Rabbi Shimon is more expansive, and he says, call anything that is counted individually, even if it's only sometimes counted individually. That includes eggs. So according to Resh Lakish, we can understand the last line of that previous Baraita that said, the egg, that if it's safek, it's the chumrah, and because it's talking about terefah, and if it gets mixed up in 1,000, it's no good. That can also be explained according to terefah because an egg is significant, because sometimes it's sold as a unit. So that works for Resh Lakish. But for Rabbi Yochanan, since it's not always sold as a unit, that answer will not work. And so now we're going to have a final answer, which I'll only quote the beginning of it, but we'll elaborate it on the next stuff. Amarav Papa, and here, Hi Tana delitra ketziot. Oh, the Tana that would say that even 1 in 1,000 applies to eggs, even though eggs are not always sold individually. We have an author that would agree with that. It's the author of this following Baraita, which is talking about dried figs. The way they would eat figs back then, it was they would dry them and press them into cakes so that you couldn't tell the figs apart, and then you would cut them. So the figs are no longer countable. You can't even tell how many figs there are. So we'll see the full source tomorrow, but his general point is Damar kol davar shebeminyan derabanan la batel v'chol sheken deoraita. Anything that you count, not like figs that you can't count them, but anything else that is grouped together in such a way that you can count them, even if you sell them together, nevertheless, in the derabanan or deoraita, they do not become nullified because each thing is a distinct unit because you can count it. And so that opinion can explain our Baraita, even if it's talking about an egg that's a terefah, and that would explain why it's safek doraita. and also why it's not nullified. But the whole beginning of the Baraita can be talking about a derabanan reason for the egg that's born on Yom Tov, and that would support Rabbi Yishak and Rav Yosef. Okay, so a lot of technical details here, but fundamentally we're bringing different opinions for us to support and to challenge these four fundamental reasons of why the egg is prohibited according to Bet Hillel. Baruch Adonai L'olam, amen ve'amen.